and welcome to another episode of Life Matters. This is an actuality series where we get to discuss and even unpack some of life's most dire situations and challenges that we face every day. Childhood is supposed to be a time for fun and not worry, but an alarming number of our children are feeling anxious. Anxiety disorders are a common mental illness in South Africa, and approximately 1 in 5 South Africans are affected each year. That's according to the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. To help us understand and answer all these questions, I have clinical psychologist Justin Lakay. He's in studio with me. Thank you for joining us, Justin. And on a previous episode, we spoke about anxiety in adults. But anxiety is not something that children don't experience.
Correct. I think children do experience anxiety as well. And many of the times the anxiety or the phobias that we have in adulthood actually stem from our childhood. But many times they look different. So for example, a kid might be irritable, might be frustrated, might be crying, and we might be thinking it's something completely different, but he might actually be showing you he's quite anxious. Sometimes a kid might be clingy and needy. You might feel like this is too much, like why is the kid becoming clingy? Then we realize this kid might be excessively anxious, but it can be overlooked as well because these are also signs of children who are hungry, children who are in pain, who are ill. So it's quite difficult to differentiate whether it's a developmental need or whether it's actually anxiety. Yeah.
So anxiety presents slightly differently in children from adults then?
Yeah, they do. So for adults, we are able to describe what's happening to us. We're able to know what we're anxious about. A kid might not have that. So for example, it's very, very difficult for us to know when something is wrong, but the parent's role is quite important because the parent understands the child and knows the child really, really well. So for example, a child might be timid and shy naturally, and then the mom might be able to say, okay, this child is being a lot more shy, he's a lot more withdrawn, or he's a lot more clingy, excessively clingy to the degree that the mom will be able to determine it, because some kids are just clingy, that's how they are. And that's okay. So, but sometimes when it becomes too much, we need to actually zoom into what might be happening, why the kid's doing this. For example, when you are a school-going child, bullying, you might be afraid of going to school because of bullying, and that's excessive. And the kid might complain of a tummy that's paining, or they might complain of headaches, or any reason to skip school, which is normally kids that love school, so now you know something else might be happening. The medical profession says there's nothing wrong, so then you know this needs to be examined. Yeah.
So you've touched on now some of those things that can cause anxiety. I have a teenager. I think teenagers, they come with all their own issues, but anxiety is definitely something that we see in teenagers. I'm seeing it now a lot with my daughter also, that there's a lot more anxiety there now. And you speaking about it, I'm recognizing that it's anxiety and not necessarily just a teenage thing that they're going through.
That's correct. So if you look at children, and anxiety in kids, they are at its most prevalent when they are younger and when they are in puberty. So in these two phases, and might be because of developmental stages, they are quite prone to becoming anxious. So here it's about being aware of what the kid is going through, asking them what's happening. Teenagers also have a lot of things going their way. I mean, we speak about academic studies, we speak about social life, and then of course added to this, the power of the media and our media affects and influences their daily behavior, the interactions. I think that's something just to be aware of as a parent as well. Because you see, when you are at school or when you are at home, you can escape. But social media, we carry it with us on our phones these days. So the kid can't escape whatever the bullying is taking place because of cyberbullying or things like that. And also media has this perfect life that it portrays, and we try to live up to this life knowing that's unattainable. And the bar keeps on moving the closer we get. So then we feel worthless, we feel like we get the low self-esteem because of all of these not meeting the needs or not meeting the standards portrayed by media. Yeah.
So the social media aspect, and I mean, our kids are generally always on their devices. If they're in a room with children and they can speak to each other, they would rather be on their phones and find that way to connect to each other. Yeah. So social media and how we handle that is also something that we need to deal with our kids with and dealing with their anxiety.
Yeah. It's a very tricky thing because the world is moving into a very technological driven lifestyle, if I can put it that way. And taking it away, we're not sure what the impact would be. But many times allowing them, but also giving them that freedom. I think the fact that this thing follows us, the lifestyle follows us, wanting to have a nice car, a nice house, looking beautiful, being examined by the rules set out by media. I think those are things that follows us now. In the past, you could have put away the book, you could turn off the television and you'll be in a safe space. Now you're constantly looking at this. So whatever we're spending time with, of course, informs who we become and what we, how we see ourselves. I think that's just something to think about. Yeah.
What kind of signs and symptoms can we look out for to see if our kids are experiencing anxiety?
Some of the signs and symptoms that may occur. So for teenagers and up, it might be a little bit similar to adults. So they will be having headaches, they might be having difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping. For younger kids, it's a little bit more tricky because, like I said earlier, they might complain of stomach aches. They might complain of something that you think is medically related. They might be very irritable, which is also something that's developmental for teenagers. So now you're not sure what's really happening for them. But one of the clear signs of someone going through anxiety is as a mother, as a father, as someone in the family, you'll be able to recognize this child is different. There was a rapid shift. They're doing things and not doing things that they used to love. They are, like for example, like I said earlier, a younger child might become extra clingy. An older child will avoid situations. So they would love soccer, but they'll hate going to soccer practice suddenly, or they'll hate attending school. So these are all things that affect the child. And these are things that we need to look out for in terms of helping them.
Is treatment something that needs to be looked at? Are there other ways that we can help our kids?
Yeah, so treatment, I think, is definitely something that's helpful. And many times it's assessment. So for example, when you notice these behaviors in the child, it's probably better to go see someone immediately so that the person can get assistance, or the child can get assistance. Sometimes not the child that's the problem, it's maybe the family that needs the assistance, because the child might be a product of what's happening in the family at home. And then treatment would be normally going to medical doctor, of course, first, because you're not sure what's going on. It could be a real medical condition, or it could be linked to something like bullying at school, and then afraid to speak out about it. Sometimes the kid doesn't know what's wrong, and this is where finding help from someone who deals in children therapeutically, or deals with them therapeutically, like a clinical psychologist working with children. They will be able to, they have means and tools and techniques to help extract what might be happening for the child and how they might be experiencing their world. Because children live in this world of fantasy, especially when they're younger. And you're not able to tell what's real and what's not. So this is where the professional comes in and works with the child, and they are able to speak about or discuss things that might be affecting them, but in their way, and which sometimes we're not willing or able to listen or understand what they might be feeling.
Us as parents, what do we, or as guardians, us watching these kids, seeing what they're going through, there's much more that we can do. What is our role here? How do we lead them through what anxieties that they do have?
Experiencing. At different phases, of course, there's different things that parents can do. And I'll speak about the different phases. For example, you get maybe a young child, a school-going child, or someone just attending school, and then you get your teenager, kids going through puberty. But when you look at the young child, it's important that here you give them developmental tasks and keep them within doing things that they are allowed to do, things that might not cause them anxiety. Also reassuring them. I think here's a practical step. It would be something like, when you leave your child with someone and saying to them, okay, mom is going to the shop, eh? Mommy will be back by a certain time, or if you don't give it time, mommy will be back tonight. But you have to make sure that tonight you come back. And if you don't come back, it's to call and say, mommy said I'm going to come back, but I'm not coming back. So the child learns to trust the environment and learns to trust you. Many people also say before your child attends school to maybe send them to someone to be looked after for a day, just so they can get used to the separation. And speaking to them throughout, even when it's bedtime. It's time to go to bed. I'm going to be in the next room. You must have a good night's sleep, eh? And constantly just reinforcing that and reassuring them that even though you are away from them, that they are not alone and they are still safe. Because like with adults, anxiety is something about, I fear impending harm. Something can happen to me. But for a child, sometimes it can be something can happen to mom or dad. So that's why it's important for you to keep reassuring them. When it comes to school-going kids and even teenagers, here it comes down to, number one, definitely boundaries and putting healthy boundaries in place. Knowing, for example, an 8-year-old can't go to a park on its own. That can be quite anxiety provoking, but a 15-year-old might be able to. So knowing when and how the kid or what they might need at that time, the child might need at the time. The other thing that's also important is parents and recognizing your own anxieties. Because many times we as parents can cause our kids to be anxious about certain things, and finding help for yourself or finding support for yourself so you can deal and cope with your anxiety so that your anxieties do not affect your kid or affect your child in their development. For example, if you are afraid of climbing up a mountain because you're afraid of heights, you preventing your child from doing it. Later on, they might also develop a fear of heights and might never be able to take part in these kind of activities. So it's just about knowing what you feel, finding your necessary help, and then you're able to help your child. Yeah.
So from our discussion previously about anxiety in adults and now in children, there seems to also be a push to be aware and acknowledge what's happening with you instead of avoiding.
Yeah.
And with kids, us as the guardians, we the first people who possibly are aware and not avoiding again the situation, always addressing.
That's right. I think when the child becomes anxious, he doesn't know what's happening to him. He doesn't have the words, he doesn't have the ability to express. He can only explain the feeling that he's having. And many times this is where a parent can ask a child, oh, I see that you're quite afraid of the dog. And then the reassurance comes in and saying, but the dog won't bite you. Come, let's touch the dog together. But of course, you need to make sure that the dog is a safe object, because the dog is not going to be safe and the dog does bite him. It's going to increase his anxiety. So this is very careful. It's about gentle exposure, but not too much. Also knowing your child and know this is enough. Many times we write off anxiety and say, no, you need to just get on with it. You need to live your life, which is not healthy for the child, because now the child feels that my anxiety or how I feel is not being acknowledged by my mom and dad. So I will try to avoid them even now. So when someone's trying to avoid, is a gentle exposure to it. Of course, when it's too much, you take a step back, but always mom and dad trying to gently expose the child to the thing that they might fear. And remember again, it needs to be something that's safe. Like you can't expose him to a snake and the snake bites him or something like that. It's very, very careful. Also to be aware of, I'm just thinking about something now with physical illness. Because when kids become ill, maybe it's the first asthma attack that they might have. When they have that asthma attack, they literally feel like they are dying. So the next one that they'll get, before they feel it coming up, the anxiety is peaked because they have a real fear in their mind that they are going to pass away. And just being aware of that and guiding them through the process, of course, saying we're using medication and explaining to them the concept, no matter how young they are, because we think when they are young, they don't understand what's happening. But we were young too, and we understand how, as young people, they might be experiencing a lot of different things. And just being aware, listening to them, and giving them what they need.
Justin, is treatment an option also that these parents can explore?
Definitely. I think, it's very important to know when the child might need assistance. And many times if you're not sure, the best thing is to go for help. But firstly, to speak to a medical practitioner first, because many kids are not able to determine what might be causing anxiety, and it could be because of a physical illness or a medical illness. So it's quite important for them to seek medical help first. If the medical practitioner is not able to find what's going on, the best thing would then be to refer them to a mental health care worker or mental health care practitioner who will be able to further explore. Many times the medication that they give might be helpful for the child, but it doesn't resolve the recurrence of the reoccurrence of the anxiety. And this could be because something else is causing it. And this is quite important that then the parent then realizes this and sends them for the proper care that they need.
Justin, thank you very much for being part of this episode and sharing your in-depth knowledge on the subject. To the viewers, we would love to hear from you. Please engage with us on our social media platforms so that we can have a chat about today's episode and maybe even on future topics that you would like us to address. From me, Maxine, and the team, goodbye.